Hello, this is Dr. Bob Smith again. I wanted to talk to you about vitamin D. And it's important to understand that we have got so many studies that have come out in the last 10 years, 5 years, year, 3 months on vitamin D that are pointing to the significance of vitamin D in ways that most of us have never heard of. Most of us have heard something about vitamin D is important for your immune system. Everybody knows it's important for bone health. But a lot of things are kind of left in a blank limbo with no real information. So let's look at this real quick. To reduce the risk of all sorts of things, including acute and chronic pain and inflammation, vitamin D plays a big part. We can't do anything about changing what's happened in the past, specifically your past, but we can do something about making sure that we have sufficiency of vitamin D in the future so that you don't continue to have the same problems develop as a result due to vitamin D deficiency. And understand vitamin D has been known about for a long time, specifically when it was a patented form of vitamin D2, ergocifferol. It was marketed in multiple products all over the country. It was also marketed in England, where the patent was from. Turns out ergocifferol is not the same as calciferol, which is the one that's made in your skin. This basically had the potential for a toxic effect. It also doesn't work the same way that vitamin D produced in your skin or D3 when it's used works. And it turns out that D2 is not as the same effectiveness as D3. When you look at vitamin D deficiencies, the idea basically came down that if you're below 32 nanograms, or what would be 80 nanomoles per liter, you're physiologically said to be deficient. You don't want to be anywhere close to that, because at that level you are initiating problems that are fairly significant. And we'll talk about where you want to be soon. But understand that a lot of times we're talking about people thinking they have a problem with some medication or something. It may be actually a vitamin D deficiency causing the same problem, making it worse. So when you look at things like the proton pump inhibitors, the things that have been prescribed for stomach pain, excess acid, this particular proton pump inhibitors were devised for use of something called Ehlers-Danlos tumor, which was a hypersecretive tumor of acid. And that's a very uncommon problem. It was found off-label use, it reduced the pain. The problem with doing protonics to reduce stomach acid is it also interferes with your ability to get enough calcium, get enough magnesium, which can have all of these consequences, including messing with vitamin D function because of the magnesium discrepancy. It also can cause problems with B12 absorption. So, in consequence of taking that product, can magnify vitamin D deficiency as well as magnify magnesium deficiency. Basic to understand, vitamin D receptors are everywhere. They play a big part in regulating the upregulation or downregulation of about 3,000 different gene sites that we have identified. What's important is they play a big part in the cytokines, which we think about pain. So you get more cytokines, you get more pain with low vitamin D. Sufficiency of vitamin D, that doesn't happen. It also has immune receptor activity. It also has to do with engagement, protein development, and protein manufacturing. How well the molecules in your intestines, tight junction, stays together is a part. The acute phase reactant proteins. Vitamin D helps to maintain the ability to do that as well as downregulate excessive amounts. Response to stress is controlled by vitamin D. Surface receptors of vitamin D. Regulating of cell program death is controlled by vitamin D. Growth factors, all sorts of protein ligands, early gene response, transcription, the ability to fight viruses, certain enzymes, and other miscellaneous categories. When you look at what we get down to, these membrane receptors we're talking about, which are found on every cell we own, these vitamin D receptors are non-genomic, rapid adapting response, and they actually have an effect intracellularly on calcium levels in the cell as well as how well the cell works. And if you look at what this also on the backside, the fact if you've got sufficient vitamin D, it will actually help make better tolerance and reduce inflammatory excesses with sufficiency of vitamin D. So it's not just vitamin D is involved with making your immune system be able to work and fight. It's also down regulating it so it doesn't excessively fight and cause problems. Because these problems right here, we're talking about the T cells. This is when we start talking about all sorts of different inflammatory pathologies. When you look at these and come across, you say, all these different uses of certain medications we've been doing for pain. And it turns out that vitamin D is going to address this process in an entire different way. And the neuropathic model, the nociceptive model, neither one of these really fit real well to address the problem of vitamin D. And when you have low vitamin D, your bones hurt. And this is because the swelling that occurs on the surface of the periosteum produces fluid in that area, which pulls on nerve endings. And this is why oftentimes you'll hear about children being said they're having growing pains. It's not a growing pain, they're having vitamin D deficiencies. Systemic inflammation, oftentimes genomically driven by vitamin D deficiencies. The permeability problems of the intestines and the blood-brain barrier are made worse by vitamin D deficiencies. Your immune system going off the rails and making autoimmune responses can be driven by low vitamin D. Neuroinflammation, inflammation of the nervous system, directly can be caused. And myohyperinnervation, nociceptive sprouting, in other words, you will grow more nerve endings in the muscles in a response to low vitamin D that are pain receptors. So you actually will make your muscles hurt more by not having enough vitamin D. And when you look at the effects, all of these different types of things can be made worse. Vitamin D deficiency, not enough vitamin D, makes it worse. So when we look at vitamin D, and it also seems to low levels will accelerate aging and the aging-related diseases. This is Dr. Behringer, Sir Dr. Behringer, who basically came up with the realization that hypovitamin D is involved in controlling how quickly you age. So if you don't have enough vitamin D, you age quicker. Don't want that. And if you understand that this is made worse, these diseases, and more likely with low vitamin D, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, cardiovascular disease. Now here's the problem. The incidence of people with low vitamin D or deficiency of vitamin D becomes significantly worse when you look at the populations. When you look at 60-year-olds, you're getting close to 90% deficiency rates. When you look at below the age of 30, you're beginning to have a higher level of deficiency. Deficiency of vitamin D is turning out to be almost epidemic. And when you consider the consequences of this epidemic, it's significant. Because vitamin D, we know lots about it. And we know it plays important parts to lots of things. Who would have thought that pancreas B cells could be negatively affected by low vitamin D? The very thing you need to have working right so you don't become a type 2 diabetic is made worse by low vitamin D. It may not be the answer for everything, it may not be the fountain of youth, but it definitely seems to be associated with not having enough being a bigger problem than we had ever been led to believe. So, significant of that many genes being driven, directly or indirectly, the membrane receptors, getting our vitamin D level into healthy ranges, 65 to 85 nanograms per milliliter would be a good place to start. Some of the tests you want to have done, which you want to know, you don't want to be excessive because too much of anything can be a bad thing too. You need to have your doctor work with you. If I'm your doctor, I will. Hello, Dr. Bob Smith here. It's amazing when you think about it how much information has changed and developed over the last year, 5 years, 15 years, 50 years that point to the understanding of how nutrition as a science, and specifically the interplay between us and our bacteria in our intestines and all of our genes and those bacterial genes either upregulate and produce things that make us exceedingly healthy or play a part in making us not so healthy. Part of it's what we eat, part of it's what the bacteria produce as byproducts. All of those come into play. And the only education we can actually use now to help ourselves literally is the education that gives us a background that lets us understand how this works and do it in a way that we can use it in our own daily lives. That's what I try to give people an opportunity to understand, so they have a foundation to understand when they're making choices about food, about supplements, about anything when it comes relating to their health and activities, so they know up front that this is going to be a good or great idea for me for the long term to keep me in better shape and feeling better. These are the sort of problems we face in addressing and trying to get answers on how to be healthy. And I'm Dr. Bob Smith. I would like to help you in your journey to find better health and nutrition along the way. Give us a call.